Hello everyone, I'm Michael Searle, President of the Overseas Press Club. Welcome to you all, OPC members, Silurians, friends of the Toppings, friends of the Rowans, and relatives. We have a great event for you tonight. We're considering this, though it's a little early, we're considering this the first event of our 75th anniversary year. And it's glad to see so many people come out to see what promises to be a fascinating discussion of two of the people who covered the Chinese Revolution. Our moderator tonight is Bill Holstein, who was an Asia correspondent himself for a long time, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Michael. So, the stage is this, that the Japanese had been defeated, the end of World War II had happened, and they were withdrawing from the Chinese mainland. So the communists and the nationalists had largely kept their powder dry. They had not chosen to really engage with each other, with the Japanese. They were waiting for the Japanese to leave China so that then they could settle their scores between them. They had been brewing for many years. So it's 1946. And Roy Rowan has been in the American military, right?
Right.
And now has found a job because many of the American military men couldn't get home. It took years to get all of them home. So he started driving jeeps, relief jeeps for a UN agency. So Roy Rowan is on the ground in 1946? 1946. So we've agreed with Roy and Top tonight, each of them are going to tell 3 stories which is going to encapsulate the sweep of the war. So it's a remarkable historical event. I'm pleased to think that these stories are going to capture the entire sweep of the war. So Roy, please, you're first, and we'll alternate stories and try to continue in chronological order.
Well, thank you all for coming first. In the early part of 1946, I found myself in the central plain of China with 400 trucks, 700 Chinese drivers and mechanics, and one other American, a mechanical engineer who was in charge of maintenance. Our mission was to supply all the villages south of the Yellow River, between the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, villages, some communists, some nationalists, and in the midst of that, of course, there was a pretty good war going on between the nationalists and communists. We had our trucks. We had our trucks painted with yellow and black tiger stripes, so presumably they wouldn't get attacked, but they did all the time. And we were forced to run these trucks over what were just ruts in the sand. There were no roads at that time, or what we would consider roads. So it was almost masochistic when you drove those trucks over those ruts. It just really the brakes would sometimes snap, the windshields would sometimes shatter. And your liver would take a terrible beating for it. So anyway, I spent about more than a year doing this. This other American and I would lead the convoys of 60, 70 trucks, never knowing whether the next village we were coming to was communist or nationalist. And there was sort of an allotment. The United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration was being run by Fiorello LaGuardia out of Washington, but they said they wanted us to deliver 70% of the supplies to the nationalists and 30% to the communists. Well, one time, Joe and I showed up. He was a brigadier general, and complaining that the communists weren't getting their fair share. Well, some crazy things happened in these villages. In one village, when the communists took over, they decided to have a wealth equalization plan So they told everybody in town that they go take what they want from the rich merchants' homes as well. It got so bad that the people started prying out the windows and unhinging the doors and taking everything. A week later, the nationalists returned, and they said, "Who authorized this wholesale plundering?" And they said, "Put it all back." So the next morning, all of it was piled in the street, the main street, and a couple of the worst offenders were taken out on the dike and shot. But anyway, we were fairly successful in delivering these supplies, but we were also under attack a lot. And the other American and I, we'd ride the lead Jeep and with 70 or 80 trucks behind us. And one day we took a bullet through the windshield, just missed the other guy's head. I was driving, he was sitting in the other seat of the Jeep. And we just decided right then and there to pack up and go back to Shanghai. So we hopped a train to Hankow, or Wuhan as it's called now, went to Shanghai, quit, and I was feeling very despondent. I had no job, I had no prospects, and when I arrived in Shanghai, there was a stack of mail for me, including a rejection letter from the Columbia School of Journalism. So anyway, in my gloom, in my gloomy mood, I walked over to the Palace Hotel bar. The Palace Hotel is now the Peace Hotel Annex. If you've been to China lately, and I was standing next to this gentleman. He was very nice. He was drinking straight vodka out of a blue bottle sheathed in ice, and he asked me if I'd like a drink. I had a drink. It turned out he was the Time and Life bureau chief in Shanghai, and not only that, but he told me that I used to send stories in as a freelance to various magazines, National Geographic and Life and other magazines, and not only was he interested in me as a prospect, I think, he told me that a story of mine had appeared in the current issue of Life. It was the December 7th issue in 1947, and it was celebrating the Pearl Harbor Day, and I had sent this story in about 5,000 skulls that were put temple to temple on a hillside in one little town as a memorial to the citizens who had been killed by the Japanese. So there were these 10,000 eye sockets staring out into space. It made quite a picture. Anyway, the bureau chief was interested in my reporting and suggested that I apply for a job with Life or Time, and sent me back with a letter of recommendation to New York, and I got hired. And that's how I started my career with Time 8.